Well, this is Super Bowl Sunday. I got on my black and my red. And I'm going to preach a sermon for Super Bowl. So last night, about 10 o'clock, late last night, I sat down and I wrote a sermon. And the title of my message today is Rise Up. Rise up. Anybody here ready to? Anybody ready to rise up? And last night I went and I began to tweet that I would preach this message, and I put it on Facebook because I knew the importance of this day, and I canceled Miracle Morning because I knew if I'd had Miracle Morning today, wouldn't be nobody in here but me, myself, and I. This message came to my mind the other day as a result of the Super Bowl game between the Falcons and, of course, the Patriots. And I'm sure that many of you are going to be excited, as many of you are already excited. It seems as though the whole nation is excited, waiting with great anticipation who will win. Barbecue grills have been lit up. Package stores have been filled to capacity with all kinds of booze. People are singing now that can't even sing. People are shouting today that have never shouted in church. Quiet people are talking. Mean people are smiling and laughing and all of a sudden being kind. Tight people are loosened up now, and this afternoon are going to let their hair down. And some church folk are getting out of church early because there won't be nobody on Sunday night. And then some church folk are going to lay their religion down for just a few hours and pick it back up before next Sunday. Black and red t-shirts are going like hotcakes. Millions and billions of dollars will be made from commercial sales on cable TV as all eyes are going to be gazing at a television screen. Even some cable bills that were cut off been paid and cut on today. Some gas bill won't even get paid. And other bills won't get paid because they paid the cable to make sure that all hearts will be eating, drinking, and being merry, waiting for 6 p.m. this Sunday afternoon. And if you are a Falcon fan, you will be hollering to the top of your voice, waving your hand, saying, "Rise up!" In many ways, our need for this gala and happy spirit because of so much tension is bringing us all together in many, many ways. There's been so much tension in the news, fear, people perplexed, worried about the economy, worried about the nation. And yes, they need a little relaxation. They need a little moment where people can just come together and relax and have fun. But today I want to take a good look at this two-letter word, rise up, and what it really means in life. This slogan, rise up, can also be looked at in a negative as well as a positive way. Let's look for a moment at the negative. People rise up for several reasons. Sometimes people rise up to give expression to themselves. When people want to express themselves, many times they will rise up. Some people rise up because they're tired of something and they've had enough. Sometimes people rise up because they want to see a change. They're tired of the way things used to operate. And when I was a teenager, the hippies rose because they wanted just to challenge the system. They decided rich kids to walk around with regular shoes and tennis shoes on and had millions in the bank because they were defiling the system because they wanted a change. Sometimes people rise up because people are upset about something. And sometimes people rise up because they heard some rumor and they don't know what to believe. And then some people rise up because they're just unhappy about their lives and the way things are going in their lives. And some people just rise up because they just stay mad. People rise up about any little thing nowadays. But the history of the times tells us that there have been many great rising up in the negative way. Not always in a good way, but there have been some very unhappy situations even from the beginning of eternity. Even in heaven, where there's supposed to be peace and happiness, there was a rising up. There was an angel named Lucifer who became Satan. Heaven was a peaceful, quiet place, but this angel rose up in heaven against God. And he took angels with him. They joined forces with him to try to overthrow the throne of God. That was a rising up. Heaven had a rise up with this angel. Cain rose up because of envy, and he began to slay his brother who was Abel with a stone. There have been some other rising up. There was a rising up between Abraham and Lot. Their servants got into it, and they had to split and go separate ways. When God's people were in bondage and had been in bondage for over 400 years, God decided to raise up a man named Moses. Moses rose up against Pharaoh in Egypt and led the children of Israel out of Egypt land into the land of freedom. And with all that God had done through Moses and had done with the children of Israel, they rose up in the wilderness against God and Moses. There's always been a rising up. When David became old in his age and old age, his son Absalom rose up against him and tried to take his daddy's throne. And as a result of that, the war went against Absalom, and his long, beautiful hair, the Bible says, he ran against David's army and they took in pursuit after him. And his long, beautiful hair, the Bible said, which weighed over 3 pounds, got caught in the brow of a tree and left him dangling in the air. The Maccabees period, many of you may not know much about. The Maccabees period was a period when the Jews rose up against their enemies and became victorious as they began to reestablish the Jewish nation and the temple. The Romans rose up against the church and persecuted the church for over 300 years until Constantine became the first Christian emperor and signed the Edict of Milan and broke up all of the persecution against the church. Martin Luther rose up and hung his 99 theses and hung them upon the Pope's wall and went against Catholicism in many ways. He was a monk, but he rose up against it and started the Reformation movement. As a result, you are Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian, and whatever. We moved from the Catholic Church because Martin Luther rose up. Then Martin Luther King rose up, shook this nation to its consciousness and led the nation into integration as a result of freedom, that now we can sit in places and eat in places and walk in places and say what we could never say and vote where we could never vote as a result of a man rising up. And today there's much rising up because of Black Lives Matter, because of injustice and police is shooting men with their hands already up in submission. And now as a result of this cruelty, we have now Black Lives Matter because black people are rising up saying we're tired of this brutality. Now there is a rising up protesting going on right now in our country over a newly elected president, Donald Trump. Well, these are some disturbing things in history that tells us about some people who rose up. But let's look at the positive side of people who are rising up. One of the things that I like about rising up and letting your voice be heard is because our text today is really taken from the 5th chapter of St. John. And I want you to look at St. John, and then I want you to look at Acts chapter 3, because these are two great passages. And I also want you to look at Luke chapter 15 and read about people who rose up. But before I get into the message and the text, I want to tell you something else that may help you understand the meaning of my text today about rising up. People need to rise up because when you rise up, you're leaving something behind. When you're rising up from where you were. And you can't rise up to your full potential until you leave behind what you got up from. Are you following me? You got to see it in the text today. In John chapter 5, the Bible said Jesus went to a place there was a pool. And many people were sick lying there, sick of infirmities. And they had been there for many years. But Jesus walked up on a man who had been there for 38 years. And Jesus walked up to this impotent man while he was lying there and asked him a question, "Will thou be made whole?" And as a result to this question, this man that was lying there saying, "Sir, I have no one to help me get in the water. Because every time I try to get in the water, somebody beats me to the water." Because they had been told that every year an angel would come down and trouble the water. And that the first